Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Man, today I'm excited. And let me explain to you the reason why I'm excited today. Because we have a young lady who has definitely set trends. Let me explain to you what I mean when I say set trends. This is the time of Aquarius. We're going down that universal pathway right now. This is about the coming of Aquarius, which means people are starting to understand their purpose despite all of the misinformation and stereotypes and so forth. But today I'm excited because we have a young lady who you don't hear much about their culture, especially as it relates to the feminine side. As we go on with the show, she's going to tell you who she is and what she's accomplished. But I'm really pleased that she took the time to come on to the show and explain that journey from start to finish. But even along that path, there was some catastrophic events that took place that she had to overcome. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all the way from Austin, Texas, the one, the only, the beautiful Lauren Ramos James to the show. Did I pronounce the Ramos right?
You did, but not my first name.
Laura,
that's right.
Laura Ramos James. Okay, I got it down.
You got it.
Welcome to the show, baby girl. So I was looking at your bio. Truly impressive. We won't even get to how impressive it actually is. But before we get started, who exactly is Laura James?
Well, I am a personal injury attorney in Austin. I am a mom and I am a wife.
A personal injury attorney. Hold that thought for a minute. Because there's a reason that you took that title. So let's go back for a minute. Let's go back to something that really happened to you in your life. Now let's go back even deeper than that. Let's go back deeper. Tell me about you growing up. What was that like for you growing up? You're Latino, correct?
That's right.
Tell me what's it like growing up when you was growing up being a Latino and a female?
Well, I grew up in Mexico, so not only am I Latino, but I am an immigrant. I grew up and was there from, the time I was born until I was 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And my childhood was perhaps a little different than a lot of people's. When I was 3 years old, I was attacked by a German Shepherd. And it was a catastrophic injury. It wasn't sadly just a bite on the ankle or anything like that. The dog took a piece of my nose. I had to be rushed to the hospital and have facial reconstructive surgery and then other medical procedures. And, as young as I was, I grew up with having to have a support system that looked a little bit different than most people because, I had to talk to counselors about what had happened. And, luckily for me, I had my family to support me, my parents and my sister. So I grew up with that. And, I came to the U.S. when I was 18 years old. And I realized that the way that I was going to be able to accomplish my dream of, I always wanted to be a lawyer, but the way I was going to be able to do it was not going to happen in Mexico where, corruption is just everywhere. And for you to get a legal victory, you pretty much have to pay for it. Growing up, I dreamed about being in a courtroom and being in front of juries and being the voice of people that had been wronged and that had an injustice happen, like the one that happened to me. Because what happened to me was someone was at fault, and it wasn't the dog. It was the dog owners, and the dog owners didn't properly restrain their dog, didn't warn my parents that there was a large dog in the backyard, and instead they placed blame on my parents and on me. And so I always had that, drive to get justice. I decided, I realized once I was here that here was the place where I was going to be able to do that. So I ended up staying in the US. I learned English. I then, went to college, went to law school, and then a few years later founded my own law firm that's been around for 6 years, where we help injury victims get justice.
Let's go back for a minute. Man, you literally grew up in Mexico. What city did you grow up in Mexico?
So it's called Monclova, and it is, it is fairly remote. There's no airport there. To get there, you basically have to drive from another city that has an airport, Monterrey. That's about 2.5 hours away.
What's it like growing up where you grew up? I forgive me if I'm not fully aware of all of the cities in Mexico. We know about the resorts, but you grew up in actually in Mexico. Like, did you grow up in a nice suburb? Was it low class, medium class? Give me some insight on where you grew up.
Yeah, so the city that I'm from is, it's known for, it has a steel factory that has now since closed, but most people were employed by the steel factory there. My family was middle class. And, in Mexico, I guess in that specific part of Mexico, there aren't any, any tourist attraction, so to speak. So even people from Mexico aren't very familiar with that city. It's a small city.
When you mention the dog attacking you at 3 years old, I know it's kind of probably hard to go back that far. You lived in a pretty middle class community when the dog attacked you, and how did your family wind up being? Basically, how did the tables flip to where they became the ones that should have been held responsible?
Well, the way justice works in Mexico is completely different than here. Here we have personal injury lawyers that will fight for injury victims and try to get them their medical expenses covered, their lost wages, their medical treatment, and things like that. And things are completely different over there. Here we have, homeowners insurance will sometimes take care of stuff like that. And over there, there was never any litigation because the people that owned the dog were acquaintances of my family, but there was no responsibility taken by them to help my parents and my family bear the expenses of, the very substantial medical treatment that I was going to need, for years. So it was just kind of like, I'd say, almost like a neighborhood dispute between them, and it didn't go anywhere. It's kind of like, you guys should take care of this or help with this, and then no, it was your own fault. And that's, it didn't go anywhere other than, like I mentioned, my family basically taking care of it.
How much did it roughly cost? Now that you're older, they had to give you a ballpark figure with the rehab, the reconstructive. What are we talking about as far as monetary dollars out of your family's pockets?
I've never asked, but I can only imagine, because now that I do this for a living and I help people right. that go through the same stuff, the costs are just, extremely significant.
What kind of strain did this have on your family? I know you were young, but what kind of strain did it have on your family to keep you guys' lifestyle abrupt, and to make sure, because you didn't leave until you was 18, and to make sure that you was able to be comfortable while going through this process of rehabilitation, pretty much?
Yeah, my parents never wanted to burden me or my sister with any of that. So, I mean, God only knows what they went through without ever complaining or saying like, oh, now we have to, now we have to make sacrifices because this happened. But you can only imagine. I mean, a middle class family having to deal with that, and then the other thing is health insurance works different over there.
I was getting ready to ask
Here,
that. What
the
is that?
majority of people.
Well,
Sorry?
I was getting ready to ask you that. What is the health insurance or the health business and medical community like where you grew up?
Well, in my specific situation, we didn't have health insurance that was going to cover for that stuff. That was going to cover that stuff. So I know that there are different scenarios. If you work for a certain entity or if you're related to, some sort of government job and things like that. But it is definitely not as prevalent as it is here in the U.S. It's basically, if something happens to you, then you're responsible and you cover your medical expenses.
Let's let's keep the topic right where it is. I'm trying to go now. Take me into a life of you going to school, let's start from your grade school to elementary, junior high to high school, because you left at 18, so that means you graduated from in Mexico. Am I correct? You graduated from high school there.
That's correct. That's right. I went hometown. I had relatives and always wanted to live there. So I asked my parents if I could go to Mexico City. So that's where I graduated from high school. But what it looked like for me, I mean, kids aren't inherently mean, but they just call it as they see it. So they would point out, sometimes I'd have to show up with like bandages on my face, or when the scar was healing, it was still very visible, and there were comments that were made, and looking back, I mean, that all was painful, and that all was something that made me who I am. So sometimes I wonder that this is such a horrible thing, but would I be where I am had that not happened?
I know we talked about the healthcare industry there, but let's talk about something deeper than that. Let's talk about how you had to deal with that emotionally. How was your mental state going from 3 years old to all the different transition of schooling, and going through rehab, worrying about, and you're a female. Beauty is important to a female. How was your mental health? As we know about the physical part, but how was your mental health going through this?
Yeah, it was definitely affected. I grew up an animal lover, and I still am. But this truly impacted how I felt being around dogs, and we grew up with small dogs, but I didn't want to not be exposed to large dogs or not be able to approach them. Was one of the things that became part of work that I had to do as a little girl, like to overcome that type of fear and trauma. And so I was fortunate that my parents wanted me to be as normal as possible. So they sought out the help of a counselor, and it was a number of counselors, and not all at the same time, but one, and then if it didn't work out, we'd try out another person, and to deal with that trauma and that fear of being attacked again, not being able to be around dogs. And then, like you mentioned, I don't have a point of comparison. I can't tell you what a normal childhood looks like without it, because it was just part of how I grew up. I dealt with having the scar. I dealt with, everyone noticing it. It wasn't a scar that I could put a shirt on and it'd be hidden. It is in the middle of my face. And so to grow up with that, you just, I think, learn to adapt and learn to deal with, something you experience daily. And it is definitely difficult. It makes you self-conscious. It makes you feel as though you're not worthy, or that people don't want to hear what you have to say because you're, they find you unattractive, or they find you, they kind of like aren't sure if they should ask what happened. But at the same time, that lit a fire to then kind of stand out for other reasons. And, academically, since I was very, very young, I always did well. And this just kind of lit up a fire of focusing on academics and doing well, outsmarting everyone, doing well in school, outperforming, outworking, because that was something that that I was going to be able to, basically it was something I had in my favor. So that's kind of how that played out.
You mentioned you've always wanted to envision yourself in the courtroom fighting for justice. Did a lot of that, how much amplification came to that area of representation or being a lawyer? I know you say you've always had it, but after the attack of the dog, did that amplify it even more? Even though you was young, did that amplify it even more?
Well, I'll tell you, quite frankly, I don't remember much. I mean, I was 3, so I don't remember much before then. But I do know that having that experience, anything that remotely resembled a situation of injustice, made me compelled to intervene and to help and to, make things right. And it always, they always resonated with me. And, I can very easily attribute it to that trauma and that scenario, because, that's one of my first memories. And that feeling, it's very comparable in my eyes.
How much, as you got older, before you left Mexico, how much injustice did you actually hear about, see during your time there?
You mean while I was growing up in Mexico?
Yeah, because you mentioned that basically you got to if you got money, you can buy your way out of a lot of things in Mexico. So clearly, I'm not sure. Have you seen a lot of injustice in Mexico that really made you pissed?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's everywhere. It's daily. It's at all levels. And, it's sad, but sometimes having money, you can't ever be proud of it, because, usually the way to obtain it is through, through either someone gave it to you or you stole it, or, or if you do obtain it through legal means, then you're just subject to potentially being kidnapped. And it is just a very, it's just a very unjust, unjust place overall. There are amazing things I can tell you, obviously, about my home country. The people are just, extraordinary, but just as a system, it is very unjust.
It's funny that you mentioned the word kidnap and so forth. And we see a lot of people who never been to Mexico. Our closest view to Mexico and its lifestyle is usually through cinema, television, or movies. I remember seeing the movie Man on Fire with Denzel Washington, and where he played the bodyguard for this little girl. And he when I watch movies, I listen to the script, and he was saying that this was a true story that people fail to realize. Denzel this was a true story, but he also, out of that story, shined some light in on certain parts of the culture that when you do have money, you gotta have ransom money put aside, and people get kidnapped there every so many hours. I mean, were you ever afraid growing up while you was there?
I wasn't, because I spent the majority of my time there in my home, in my hometown, which is, or used to be a very safe place. I mean, I grew up where you didn't have to lock your house, and
Hmm.
I would go to the store when it was dark, like the corner store, and I was 7 or 8. And I don't know what it really is now, because all the majority of the information I get is from the news that I absorb being here in the US and not being in Mexico. But once, when I was in Mexico City, yes, there's definitely situations that, that you are scared of, that that it's, especially as a female, that you are exposing yourself to just living potentially a source of danger. But at the same time, again, when I was there, it was a little bit of a different time. I mean, I'm 40 years old now, and when I was 15 and I had just arrived to Mexico City, things were different, and it depended on what areas of town you were, times of the day, and being accompanied. And again, it all balanced out with you maybe you hear of it happening, but as you live your life, and as you go to school, go shopping, like spend time with your friends, that is not something that's just that disrupts your daily activities. You are able to live a normal and fulfilled life, not being scared of these things happening at any moment. Things I think are different now that I've lived here for so long. If I moved back, I would definitely be scared to just like walk out the door. But yeah, I guess perspective changes.
You mentioned that you might be scared to walk out the door with all of the coverage that's happening at the borders and so forth. Being a lawyer, what do you think what from your perspective, by being a native of Mexico, now in the United States, in the legal field, you witness the good, the bad, and the ugly while you was there. What needs to happen in your eyesight with the people of Mexico in the United States? What do you think needs to happen to make your country what you might feel a safer environment?
Oh man, I don't even think we have enough time for that question. It's such a, it's such a deep question, and there are so many layers. There are so many things that have led to the situation as it is now. But, obviously the cartels, throughout the country, and getting more and more prolific and taking over more cities. And again, we could have all kinds of discussion. And I frankly don't feel like I'm even qualified to opine on this, because I just haven't lived there for so long. And a lot of what we hear about is going on, we see through the lenses of someone who doesn't live there. So people who live there probably know better of how, what needs to happen. But definitely, I'd say that is one of the roots of the problems that, that have led to this situation.
Do you think individuals as such as yourself, the Latinos that have the ability to make change in their country, and what do you think needs to happen on that aspect? Because clearly there's a lot of successful Latino Mexicans in this country that if they bond together, they have to know what these people are going through that keep trying to cross the border. You've seen the pain, you've seen the suffering. I mean, Why do you think there hasn't been a coalition, so to speak, from the successful Latinos and Mexicans that are in this country to intervene with what they see going on over there, the corruption? Because it's almost like if you got this many people that are fed up, it only takes a few to make a difference.
I really wish that were true. And what seems to be powerful here, it's nothing compared to, to something that's overrunning an entire nation. Mm. And, really there is a coalition, but it's not in the form that, that one would like or envision. But I'll tell you that since I arrived here and started practicing law, my law firm and really my practice has a special focus on helping Spanish speakers and immigrants. Okay. And, once, I truly can tell you that, like, if I were to lead by example, maybe I would have never left. So, in my eyes, I just don't see a solution. But for people that come here and are here and trying to work hard and make a great, basically follow the American dream and contribute to this country and continue to make it a great nation, that I am able to, within my area of practice and passion and expertise, I'm able to help, the majority of my clients are immigrants as well. That's one. And then the other is, there are other attorneys and colleagues of mine that do the same. They either help in the immigration arena, trying to help, either lobby for different legislation or advocate for different legislation that's going to help those people that are trying to, simply better their lives and their lives of their family and contribute to a nation of immigrants. That's one. And then, other colleagues that are in other arenas, like they do criminal defense law, trying to help immigrants understand consequences of, if they are to violate the law, perhaps because of a misunderstanding of what the law is in their countries of origin. So again, the coalition isn't, or the union isn't like of lawyers trying to go back and take down the cartels. That'd be amazing if we had the power to do something like that. But, I think we're realist and also it's simply, it's simply outside of, outside of my power, at least. I think we try to make change as we can using our passion and our skills to do that.
And, my hat's off to you for bringing that to the viewers, to let them know that there is resources out there for immigrants that come over here and feel like that there is no way out, basically. But you are saying that there is coalitions and resources available to them. What are some of the things that you have come in contact with? Because you're talking about individuals that leave everything behind. It's not like the old days where, people had horse and buggies and, was trying to carry everything they possibly could. These people are basically coming over here for fear of their life. But what are some of the things that has impacted you with what you see going on? Because you see this probably pretty much daily. What are some of the things that you hear from the individuals that are coming over here? In my industry and in my field, you see everything. Stories like, for example, people who face an injustice and really have a way of redress in the civil system, but won't come forward because they simply don't think that they have any rights, because they came to this country and they think that they are not entitled to, to fight against the people who wronged them, or that insurance companies, billion-dollar industries that enrich themselves at the expense of individuals and that are paid premiums monthly by,
hundreds of thousands of people and that need to extend coverage to those people who are injured, immigrants sometimes think that they're not entitled to things like that. So that's one. And other things that are really sad is, for example, I'll see just in a car wreck, in a car accident. If you and I like get hit by someone and, call it like a moderate hit where like your car is not drivable, you make an insurance claim, you maybe go to the doctor, you like have to miss work, you tell your work about it. And then, in a few weeks, you'll forget about it. It's as if it had never happened. For an immigrant who left everything behind, if they don't have a car, they can't get to their job. They are released immediately. They can't provide for their families. They have a stay-at-home wife and kids at home that can't eat. They can't pay rent. I mean, just a small thing such as a car wreck completely derails an entire family. And so you see certain stories like that where they are such vulnerable members of society and are put in situations that we don't understand because we don't have to face those things. And I am an immigrant myself, but I see things differently because I've been able to obtain a different citizenship status or legal status. The people who come here, that have no other way to get here, that the immigration laws simply don't allow, because obviously a topic of this conversation is why don't they just come here legally? Like why do they have to come here legally? Well, they want to come here legally. There's just no path for many of them. The immigration laws are punitive, and they don't allow certain countries to just say, hey, I want to go to the US and work hard, alongside, or like take a job that no other, American citizen wants. There's still not a path for many people that would try to do that. So that's probably for another day, a long story.
What about the exploitation that I'm pretty sure you run into, the exploitation of the workforce? And, I'm pretty sure you've dealt with a lot of injury claims where people were working by major companies or whatever and undocumented and get hurt on the job. How do you handle something like that?
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you, our law firm started a pilot a pro bono program, and we're still trying to ramp it up where we will provide basically legal help free of cost to people who find themselves in that situation. Because so what ends up happening is, unless the injury is really catastrophic, most attorneys won't be able to help. But yes, there is, there are companies that take advantage, that will tell, a worker like, hey, I'm going to call immigration services if you don't continue to come here, even if you're injured. Or that will take advantage and say, that they'll report them, even though the company who's offering the job to an undocumented individual is as much in the wrong as the citizen. But the citizen is terrified. They have, or the individual is terrified. They have their family and their livelihood is on the line. And, the working conditions are just simply horrific. In Texas, where we practice and where I'm located, this is a battle that many organizations, fight daily to try to get companies to offer, water breaks and to, you have construction workers working under, 100-degree weather, like all day, and, people fainting and falling from scaffolds. And I mean, it is absolutely horrific and abusive. And a way that we help is, one, to try to make those companies responsible through the legal system. But, there are just so many ways you can help, or one can help. And for us, another one is to put this pro bono program in motion.
Is this going to be a joint venture to help other Latinos and Mexicans that may be suffering the same type of ridicule throughout the United States? Are other law firms partnering up with you to address this situation? Because clearly that's probably one of the biggest topics that we hear all the time: the exploitation of the workforce, and them not being treated right. But like you said, some people might say, well, they should come here legally. Well, whether it's legal or illegal, there's still a certain way to treat people and not take advantage of them. That's my viewpoint. But the question is, are you guys teaming up with other lawyers to add throughout the United States to have a resource for them? Because you are located in Texas. What if this happens to somebody that's in Michigan or California or so forth?
Absolutely. I mean, I 1000% welcome anyone who wants to, partner up and participate with this project. We haven't gotten the word out, but yeah, I mean, I think that would be fantastic. Like, one of the things that we do is we try to help. There's an organization here in Texas called Workers Defense, and they advocate, for workers and their rights. And we partner up with giving educational talks to the workers so that they understand their rights. And just you used a word earlier that really resonated with me, but just amplifying that, because again, a lot of workers, they're out there 14 hours a day. They come home, they don't have, now they have to help, with their kids and stuff. They don't always have the bandwidth to actually let me go research what my rights are.
Wow. You know what? It's funny, out of pain a rose blossoms, and you definitely are that rose that has clearly come to make a difference in humanity. How can the viewers reach out to you, support your cause, and understand the mission that you and your law firm are doing along with other law firms across the country?
I so appreciate your kind words. They can find me if they just type up, ramosjames.com. That's our website. But if they go to Google and they type up Ramos James, we're in all social media platforms. Laura Ramos James, you can find me on LinkedIn. The law firm is on LinkedIn, and we can connect, through those platforms.
Thank you so much for taking time to share such a impactful story. Like I said, out of that pain and suffering that you went through, a rose has definitely been planted and has blossomed. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you reach out to her. This show is designed to empower, educate, and show that beast frame of mind, and you definitely have done that. Thank you once again for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.